Alright, welcome to the 6.3 video. We're talking about solving proportions with cross products, otherwise known as cross multiplication. Now, cross multiplication or cross products are really cool for a couple reasons. One is actually determining proportionality. So what does that mean? Well, proportionality, we're determining if things are proportional. Now, if I said 1/2 and 4/8, are those equal? Yes, they are equal. They are the same, right? 1/2 is just a simplified version of 4/8. So we would also say they're what? Proportional. Now, if we wanted to be absolutely certain, though, we could use cross products or cross multiplication. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean we're going to multiply the numbers that are across from each other. Okay? So let's multiply that 1 times that 8 first, and 1 times 8 is, of course, 8. And we're going to ask ourselves, does 8 equal the 2 times the 4, which came from right there? Well, 2 times 4 is 8, and last time I checked, 8 equals 8. So boom, we just used cross products to prove that things were proportional. So what I want you to do is take a second. I want you to try this one. Determine if these are proportional. Okay, use cross products, determine if they're proportional or not, and then play the video when you're done. Alright, so there's a couple ways of doing this. The first one would be just using straight cross products, right? So I'd say, well, 12 times 50. 12 times 50 is going to get you 600. And we're going to see, okay, does 600 equal, question mark, 32 times 20? Well, 32 times 20 is going to be 640. So they're not proportional, right? Now, the other way of doing it would be saying, all right, 12 20ths and 32 50ths. Can we simplify these fractions down? Well, yeah, I could divide, let's see, 12 20ths, work on him first. I could divide that by 4 and divide that by 4, and that would end up giving me 3/5. And let's see, oh, can I get this denominator of 50 to be 5? Because then I can really look at the two and compare. Yeah. So if I divide by 10 and divide by 10, well, let's see, 32 divided by 10 is 3.2, because remember, it's just like moving the decimal. And then 50 divided by 10 is 5. So we could also do it this way and say, oh, they're not proportional. Why? Because, well, when they have the same denominator, the numerators are different, right? So that's one way of doing it as well. I think that's maybe a little faster, maybe not, kind of depends. But we can also use cross products to solve proportions. And what do I mean by solve? I mean there's a variable and an equal sign, and we're going to solve. And real quick, before we get into solving, the property behind this, or the cross products property, says something really specific, okay? And that's if you have some number A over some number B equal to some number C over some number D, it means that A times D, which we would call AD, is equal to B times C, which we would say, well, B times C would just say BC, okay? So the cross products property just states that. This is something you guys might see on standardized tests later on. It's also just, you know, it's the property behind what we're doing. So it's good to know, but don't ever be freaked out by something like this. All of these variables just are placeholders that are just telling us something about this property. And so let's call that little thing item number 3, and then we'll move down here to item number 4, where we're actually solving using cross products. Okay, so let's start with this one. 18 over 42 equals 3 over m. Okay, so variable equal sign means we have to solve. So the question is, how can I solve this? Well, we can actually do it a couple ways, all right? So one way of doing it is kind of mental math and saying, you know what, if these are equal, that must mean if I do something, you know, to 18 to get 3, I'll do the same thing to 42 and get my answer. So 18 divided by 6 would be 3. So 42 divided by 6 would actually mean that m equals 7, right? So our, you know, to prove it, we could say 18 over 42 equals 3 over 7. And if I can simplify this down to make it 3/7, then I've got my answer. So let's see, if I divide both of those by 6, 18 divided by 6 is 3. 42 divided by 6 is 7. Last time I checked, 3/7 was the same as 3/7, okay? So that's mental math, but it doesn't always work out that easily for us, so we can't always use mental math. So let's do it using cross products, all right? So cross products would say that these two multiplied are going to equal these two multiplied. So let's do that. 18 times m. Well, 18 times m is really just like saying 18m. And that's supposed to equal 42 times 3. I should have done this in red. 18 times m. 42 times 3. Well, 42 multiplied by 3 gets you 126. All right, and now we really have what looks like a traditional equation, right? 18 times m equals 126. So how would we solve this? Well, remember, 18 is being multiplied by m. We do the inverse of multiplication, which is division. Divide by 18, divide by 18, cancels. M equals, and 126 divided by 18 ends up getting you 7. And there's your answer. Now, what did we say up here when we use mental math? Boom, right? 7. 42 divided by 6 was 7. So there you go. That's using cross products. Why don't you take a second, and I want you to try this one. 0.4 over 6 equals 18 over x. All right, so this is a pretty good example of why you can't always use mental math. Because, it's, how do I go from 0.4 to 18? Well, that's kind of rough. I don't know that off the top of my head. So cross products comes in handy. 0.4 times x is 0.4x. That's equal to 18 times 6. Okay, so simplifying down, 0.4x equals 18 times 6. It's going to get you, let's see, 108. I don't know why I'm switching colors here. Anyway, got to divide by 0.4, divide by, 0.4 to get the x by itself. Cancels. 108 divided by 0.4 is going to get you 270. There you go. And that should make some sense to us, right? Because we started out with 0.4 over 6, right, equals 18 over x. That was the original. So if these things are proportional, which they are because there's an equal sign there, right? When you have that equal sign, it means this is equal to this. Of course, that gets filled in with the number later on, but this number is way smaller than the denominator, right? 0.4 is way smaller than 6, so it makes sense that the numerator here be much smaller than the denominator here, which we know now we've solved, and that equals 270. All right, so the last thing I want you to do, pause the video, and I want you to try and solve this same problem all 3 different ways that we've learned, just to make sure that you are okay with understanding how all these different ways can get you to the same answer. Play it when you're done, and then the video will be over. All right, so equivalent ratio, just to remember here, what that means is, hey, I know these two things are ratios, and there's an equal sign, which means they're equivalent. So this is like also when I refer to this as the mental math way as well, right? So how do you go from 12 to 36? Well, you can multiply by 3. So then you take 5 times 3, and lo and behold, you get x to equal 5 times 3 is 15, right? Now, algebra would say, hey, let's get that x by itself. Or if I can get it to be x over 1, that's good, because that really is like saying x is by itself. So how do I do that? I always multiply by the denominator there so I can cancel it. And I'll make it 36 over 1 and 36 over 1 on this side as well. Multiply, multiply. Start over here. 36s can cross-cancel to be 1 and 1. So that what that's going to leave me with is x times 1, which is just the same as saying 1x or x, over 1 times 1, which is 1. And that equals, well, let's see, over here I can do some cross-canceling. 12 and 36, that can become a 1, and that can become a 3. So 3 times 5 is 15 over 1 times 1 is 1. And to simplify this thing just a little bit further and to finish it up, x over 1, it's just like saying x, right? 5 over 1 is 5, so x over 1 is x. 15 over 1 is, well, it's just 15. And there's your answer using the algebraic way. And then what we talked about today, cross multiplication. you could first simplify these fractions down if you wanted, but you can't. Okay, so we're just going to cross multiply. 36 times 5 gets you 180. And that's going to be equal to 12 times x. And if you take 180 and you divide that by 12, like we need to do here, divide by 12, to cancel there, divide by 12, you get x to equal 15 again. So check it out. Either way you want to use is going to get you the right answer. Remember, sometimes you cannot always use the equivalent ratio or mental math way, so you might have to use algebra or cross multiplication. All three are great ways of doing it. This is the end of the video. I will be quiet. Goodbye. See you in class.